Grand Rising. Grand Rising. Hope everyone's doing well.
Peace, Grand Rising, everybody.
How's everyone doing out there this rising? Let us get some ones if you can hear us clearly. If everybody's coming through all right. Grand Rising David Corey. Grand
Mic
Rising
check.
LJ
Peace,
Free.
peace. Peace,
Grand,
Pamela Hall.
Grand Rising
Two, one,
Original
two.
Original Tiller. Grand Rising Mechadon 1. Make sure I've missed anybody. I think that's everybody I got. If not, Grand Rising. Hope everyone's had a great weekend. Hope they're having an even better Monday. Uh, so, how did y'all like that intro?
Why do you think I got over here so late?
that,
I was
that,
over there trying to freestyle at 8 a.m.
don't do that. That was a Bones McCoy special.
Where's Bones at, man? I want to tell him about that.
He'll be coming in shortly. He'll be coming in shortly.
I need an extended version for when I'm doing the laundry.
The extent, you know what? I'm not. David said he liked that. That's what's up. So that's what's going to be the new intro um, from now on. Before we get started, so y'all better listen to that until we come on in. That's also how we're going to end the show, by the way. It's going to be the intro and the outro. So what's going on with you? You said don't sell out. What it do?
What to do? What to do? Peace, free. What's going on? What's going on with you, TMH?
I was doing some more of my genealogy this weekend as I was helping others. Grand Rising, Arthur Gray. Hope you're doing well. And while I was doing my genealogy, I came across some very interesting information. And I had uh, James Flames, aka Doodle Vision, um, I guess for lack of a better term, confirm it for me. It seems like one of my third great grandfathers appeared to be traveling back and forth between South Carolina and Canada because he had like I want to say it's what would be known as a temporary visa, but it was called an alien certificate. So,
Man,
and it said his nationality. It said his nationality was Canadian. So, yeah, I'm gonna do some more digging on that. But
wow. That's what's up.
very,
New discoveries. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
yeah, but just one of the ones that you don't expect,
Yeah. It's an alien certificate.
hmm
It's a hell of a lot different than what was the other term? What do they use now? I just
Oh,
real blank.
visas. You
Visas,
got you
yeah.
got passports and things of that nature. But this was back in 1929, if I'm not
Wow.
mistaken, when he went and got the when he went and got it done.
Hmm.
So yeah, very interesting and surprising to say the very least. So yeah, man.
That's what's up.
So let's see, where do we start? Where do we end up last Friday? Oh yeah, we was just about to go into the migration of the Chickamauga. Um, in the Cherokee American War, that's basically called the Chickamauga War. And as we know, the Chickamauga is where um, dragging canoe, not dragon, like in a dragon, but dragging as in to drag something. He
Like
is a,
pulling, yeah,
yeah, he
pulling
was.
along.
Look, man, that's my messed up accent.
No,
You take the seven
no, because
five seven. Look, you take the 757 and you mix it with Macon, Georgia, and throw in some Northern Virginia, and this is what you get. So my
this is
apologies,
gonna get.
people, for confusing
No, because
everybody.
wasn't it written somewhere else as dragon, as in like the reptile, reptilian beast?
Bruh,
Didn't
as much as I would love
I,
to say that, nah, I didn't see it. That don't mean it wasn't the case,
I
but
thought dragon.
yeah. But I appreciate you looking out for me, though.
Yeah, you
Appreciate.
got. Yeah, you could. I could have sworn.
Nah, man, not even close. Okay,
Dragon. Yeah, okay.
yeah,
There's a G on the end of that one.
yeah,
Okay.
dragging canoe, not dragon canoe.
Oh man.
So yeah, so forgive me for that, people. Uh,
All right. All right.
but before we get started, I want to go ahead and you know, read out, let everybody know what our mission statement is and who we are. Um, we are a Autonomous Assembly, as some people affectionately call us A2. Um, my name is TMH Thomas Russell, and with us, as always, is a grand no sellout, and then we'll have Bones H. McCoy who'll be joining us later, and we make up a portion, which is A2, not all of it, but it's a portion. And our mission as a Autonomous Assembly is that we're a nonprofit organization dedicated to raising up Indigenous American voices by using genealogy, also known as family history, which is the study of families and tracing their lineage and history. Uh, Genealogists use oral interviews, historical records, genetic analysis, and other records to obtain information about a family and to demonstrate kinship and pedigrees of its membership. And our core values are the foundations of our company, essential to our success, and serve as a lens through which we evaluate every business decision. Those core values are integrity, which is know and do what is right, respect, treating others the way you want to be treated, responsibility, embrace opportunities to contribute, and servant leadership, serve the common good. And as you know, our goal here is to help those who wish to connect with their tribe, American Indian tribe, and then help their community and their tribe to become self sufficient. We're not here to tell you who you are, we're not here to tell you who you're not. We're just here to help you find your way through the genealogy path. So, now that we didn't get that service announcement out the way, is there anything that you want to add to that, no seller that I missed?
Nope, I wouldn't have said it any better. I couldn't say it any better. No, but definitely that was very accurate, obviously, of our mission statement and what we're here to do. So, anybody got any questions? I'm gonna be dropping links all day.
Exactly. Grand Rising, Ladarian Woods. Appreciate you. Thanks for joining us this rising. And look, no seller, as I was reading the mission because it's on the AttakullakullaAssembly.com website. I came across the word genealogist and I had to pause. I don't know if anybody caught it, but I wasn't gonna say genealogist, and I just leave it at that.
No, you have to check some of these words.
Yeah, those English words with a lot of syllables in them can sometimes throw you, especially when you're used to reading Indian names and Indian words and foreign words.
Yep. You be out here casting spells and don't even know it. You're messing up words. You gotta decipher between the Indian languages and this English.
Exactly. So we're going to be starting again with the Cherokee Wars. Grand Rising, Carrie Bay. We're going to be starting with the Cherokee Wars, and I'm going to put the link in the chat so you can follow along. And again, the purpose of being able to put the link in the chat is one, for you to keep up and be able to go back and read over it and do your research. Anything that we put in the chat, especially when it's coming from Wikipedia or what have you, for those that are not aware, the Wikipedia pages always have the sources at the bottom of it, as they should. If they're not, then, that could be a problem. For the most part, anytime we put anything on in the chat, that's from Wikipedia. It will have a list of sources so you can do your research. If this conversation pertains to any of you who are part of the tribe that we're speaking about or speaking on, that you can, confirm or even refute, and you have proof, please be more than happy to share this information with us, because we want to make sure we get this information out, because we know that Wikipedia, any type of media or any type of books, that's just one source of information. even though in some instances it can be a primary source, but that does not necessarily mean it's the primary source. Another primary source would be actually talking to the actual tribes, or talk to someone who's from the tribes that actually has the documentation, or talk to the elders that can verify or refute what has been stated. And those are some of the things that we try to do as well. So we just don't want to get the written documentation from quote unquote historical vantage point, but we also want to get the information from individuals that are actually part of the tribe themselves, which makes it that much easier to get to the real truth. Because as we all know, there's three sides to every story: side A, side B, and side C, which is the objective truth. So that being said, let's go ahead and get these links in the chat so we can get started. All right. And while I put the link in it, the chat, as many of you probably notice and probably either are paying attention or have not really paid attention to, the caller number is at the top. Uh, so we don't mind people calling in. We just ask that if you're going to call in, it be based off the subject matter, um, and that it's something that you can contribute, or even if you have a question. And if you have something to add, or if you have something that's that you would like to dispute, please bring your verification. As long as you're respectful, we'll be respectful. But we just want to let you know that there is a caller number, and that's 669-900-6833. And the meeting ID is 603-320-609. And that meeting ID will change daily because we're always putting out a new um, link. So the ID number will work today, and it will work for today only until further notice. So just wanted to put that information out there. Hopefully, we may have some people call in, and we will definitely go from there. So, no sellout. Are you ready to lead us in with this reading so we can find out about these migrating Chickamauga? Maybe.
Yes, I am. My bad. I was in the chat. I was in the chat trying to look up what it was doing, but I didn't speak to. But everybody that I didn't speak to personally, rising, grand rising, y'all.
My bad. I ain't mean to call you out like that, bro. I ain't mean to catch you up.
Look, I just deleted. I was up to the last name too. I just deleted everything, trying to get back to the mute button.
It's all good. But for those of you who don't know, we are broadcasting from two different areas. So even though No Cell and I are in the same state, we're literally like 3.5 hours apart. So I have a distinct advantage because I am on three different devices. So
maybe you know what? Okay, I'm pulling out the second one. Let me pull out. That's what I should have done. My bad. I'm sitting here split screening, and I should just use the other phone. Okay, all right.
Oh boy, it's all good though. David Corey said, "Let go." We'll begin right on it, David. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Chief Dragging Canoe, not to be confused with Dragon Canoe. Dragging Canoe. Um, Remember they split after the first part of the Revolutionary War in 1776. So in 1777, they headed south to get away from the encroaching Europeans. They broke away from Cherokee Nation. So he took his people and he split, and this is where we're going to be talking about that migration. So hope everyone's ready. Get your hard hats. What do you call it? Backhoes and this bone with your front end loaders and all that good stuff. Grand Rising, Marlon P.
All right. So we're from the top with it.
Yeah,
Cherokee American Wars.
migration of Chickamauga.
Okay, migration.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's right under colonial response. So it's basically a quarter way down the page.
Two phases, the conflict.
David Corey says Dragon is a man. Hold on, David, you got me. If I read what you write, it looks like sound like I'm intoxicated. What's Let me drink. They be like TMH be drinking. They be like TMH be drinking in the horizon. What's going on?
How I get up?
They gonna have me set up for real. What he said, dragging is a man or a woman who is black, and dragging is a beating or getting drugged. Okay, thanks, Dave. Appreciate you. Yeah, so we're talking about dragging canoe, not dragon canoe.
Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to get to where. Let me see. I can't find where we at.
Migration to Chickamauga. The Cherokee American Wars. Wikipedia.org/Cherokee-American_wars.
Oh, is that under the Prelude or Revolutionary War?
No, well, it's under that. I put the. Hold on, let me put the link in back
I
chat.
think I clicked the backtrack link. That's what it was from last night. Or not last night, whenever you posted it.
Hold on, let me.
My bad, everybody. Bear with us. No Bear Grease.
All right, I just put it back in the back chat.
All right.
David Corey says, "Man or woman who fights back." Sorry, no worries, David. It's Monday, bro. It's Monday.
All right, now I got the right link.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to figure out where on the page.
So if you scroll down a quarter of the way,
mind you, I'm on my
on your mobile device.
I'm on my mobile device, so a quarter of the way for me. There's probably a couple lines on your computer, daughter.
Yeah. I'm looking at a 17-inch monitor.
Well, I'm not. So it's not under the Prelude, right? The Prelude is the first section after the setup, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's under the Prelude. It's way under the Prelude. You'll
Well,
pass.
that's what I'm looking for. I'm at the top.
Yeah. You'll pass aftermath of French. You'll pass the treaties and land cessation. You'll pass Dunmore's War. You'll pass early colonial settlements. You'll pass Henderson's Purchase. You'll pass the Revolutionary War phase. You'll pass fighting of the Loyalists. You'll pass visit from the Northern tribes. And then you'll also pass first Cherokee campaigns. And then you'll get to colonial response. And then it will be right under colonial response listed as migration to the Chickamauga. David Corey says his fingers are drunk. Really? I know sometimes when you're using these devices, spell check will mess you up.
Sure will. My bad, y'all. I'm looking at under each one of these sections, trying to find out where we was at. You want to kick it off in TMH?
Yeah, I kick it off.
I'm still looking.
Grand Rising, you don't want it. Grand Rising, Autonomous Assembly. All right, so we're at migration to Chickamauga. You didn't want to read this first word. That's what it is. You think you slick.
No, for real. You know I like pronouncing stuff. I'll take a pass now.
Nah, I'm good.
I'll step out there. I can't find it. You know I'll help you out. Look, I'm on the British victory in the North, battles in the Deep South. I'm looking into every one of these sections looking for this thing. I knew
Okay,
I should have kept it up.
it's all good. It starts reading. Oconostota supported making peace with the colonists. Dragging Canoe called for the women, children, and old to be sent to the Hiwassee and for the warriors to burn the towns, then ambushed the Virginians at the French Broad River. The Oconostota, uh, Attakullakulla, and older chiefs decided against that plan. Oconostota sent word to the approaching colonial army, offering to exchange Dragging Canoe and Cameron if the Overhill Towns were spared. So they're being sold out already, people.
Found it.
Dragging Canoe wanted to stop burning the towns and then come around, double back, and then ambush the Virginia colonies. But the Attakullakulla and the older chiefs, they didn't want that to happen. They wanted peace. So they was willing to offer dragging dragging canoe and Cameron if the Overhill towns were spared. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this next paragraph and then you got it. It says
All
Dragging
right.
Canoe spoke to the council of the Overhill towns, denouncing the older leaders as rogues and Virginians for their willingness to cede land for an ephemeral safety. He concluded, "As for me, I have my young warriors about me. We will have our lands." Afterward, he and other militant leaders, including the Ostenaco, gathered like-minded Cherokee from Overhill Valley and Hills towns and migrated to what is now Chattanooga, Tennessee area, where the Great Indian Warpath crossed the Chickamauga River, South Chickamauga Creek. Since Dragon Canoe had the town had made the town his seat of operations, frontier Americans called his faction the Chickamaugas. The other refugees turned up in Pensacola and wintered there. So other Cherokee refugees actually went to Pensacola. So I'm assuming it's Pensacola, Florida. Grand Rising Golden Moon, aka KD. So my question before you get started reading, is who are these Astenako and who are these Oconostota? So let's go ahead and do some early morning digging or early rising digging, excuse me. And I'm gonna pull up Oconostota.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's see. And what I'll do is after I pull it up, I'll pull it in chat because sometimes we pull up these links and they're not really live links. They don't give you the information. Uh, so we're going to be looking at the Oconostota and we're going to be looking at the Ostenaco. As soon as I pull them up, I'll put them in the chat. All right, let's see. Now, this one gives a warning. It says this article includes a list of references, but its sources remain unclear because it is insufficient inline citations. Please help to improve this article. So here's one of the situations where a lot of the some of the information might not be verifiable. So we'll take this with a grain of salt, but it does give you that warning before you start. Uh, Go ahead and put this in the chat. So this is for the Asanako. And I'll also put the one in for, no, the one I just put in was for the Akano Soda. And this one is, what I'm putting now is Asanako. And this one reads, this article relies too much on references to primary sources. Please improve this by adding secondary or tertiary sources. Okay, so this says it relies too much on primary sources. I thought primary sources were references and primary sources were good. But anyway,
What's wrong with a primary source? You want
look,
secondary?
look, bro. Look, man.
Okay.
I'm
If
just, I'm
primary
just,
means young. I don't know.
I'm just reading. I'm just reading what I see. You know. So the first Wikipedia page we're gonna look at, that's the first link, which is actually the second link I sent you, is the Oconostota, and it says Oconostota, circa 1710 through 1783. Also, stalking Turkey was a Skiagusta of Chota and the first beloved man of the Cherokee from 1775 to 1781. His Cherokee name, according to Mooney, was Againstata, which he translated as groundhog sausage. Wait, what?
Pardon me.
Look, that's why I put the link in there. So people can look at it themselves. It's right. It's right under name. It says his Cherokee name, according to Mooney, which is spelled Mooney, and I may be pronouncing it incorrectly. So if I am, please correct me. It says it was Agenstata, which he translated. So it's talking about either him or Mooney translated it as groundhog sausage. Agana equals groundhog, and tistutual, I'm pounding it, as in pounding meat in a mortar. It appears as Oconostota with two A's on his grave marker at the site of Chota. Chota had been the chief town of the Overhill Cherokee for a time. So to give you a little bit of background on Oconostota, it says may have been a son of Moitoy of Toledo. Now remember, Moitoy was who? Moitoy was declared emperor of the Cherokee. Now remember we talked about what an emperor is. When you're declared emperor of the Cherokee, or you declared emperor in many cases, not all, but in many cases, that means you are ruling over different land masses or multiple land masses.
In multiple, yeah, exactly. That's how I see it.
So Oconostota, it says, may have been the son of Moitoy of Toledo and was born around 1704, one of 11 children. It says the identity of Oconostota's first wife is a mystery, although she was of the Paint clan. Their daughter, Leoneoli, married his cousin, Attakullakulla, his predecessor as first beloved man. So Attakullakulla ended up replacing Oconostota when he was no longer first beloved man or chief. So some sources claim Leoneoli was a Natchez refuge who was adopted as a daughter of Oconostota's wife, as the Cherokee were matrilineal society. Inheritance and descent went through the mother's clan. And it says some Natchez lived in the upper south prior to relocating further south. Oconostota first appears in historical records in 1736. He was a prominent warrior among the Cherokee and was called the Great Warrior of Chota. He may have been influenced by German utopian Christian Priber, who lived with the Cherokee from about 1735 to 1739. Come on, man. Not this again. I'm going to repeat that.
Not this again is right.
Not this again. Oconostota first appears in historical records in 1736. He was a prominent warrior among the Cherokee and was called the Great Warrior of Chota. It says he may have been influenced by the German utopian Christian Priber, who lived with the Cherokee from about 1735 to 1739. He eventually transferred his allegiance from French to British in 1753, led a pro-British Cherokee force against the Choctaw. Over the next 12 years, the Cherokee fought both with and against the British. But as more and more American settlers encroached on Cherokee land, the Cherokee threw their support behind the British. Now you have to remember, with what we was talking about last week, with the Viceroyalty of Spain, the land changed ownerships numerous times between the French, the Spanish, and the Europeans. So this could have been one of the many reasons why there was a change in allegiance. Because one minute the French own it, the next minute the Spanish own it, the next minute the English own it, or the Britons own it. So that would, I don't know about y'all, but that would kind of frustrate and irritate me. But that's just me. Then it goes on to read in the next paragraph that Oconostota led a February 1760 attack on Fort Prince George, where 29 Cherokee chiefs seeking peace had been imprisoned and then executed. He also defeated Colonel Archibald Montgomery in Macon County in June 1760 and later captured Fort Loudon. So, according to this, there were 29 Cherokee chiefs seeking peace and they had been imprisoned and then executed. And they were on Fort Prince George. This is something that Doodle Vision talked a lot about, that there were a lot of forts. And these forts were very integral in the Trail of Tears, which is something we're gonna have to cover and talk about.
We definitely are gonna have to tackle that. Now, my question: you said he took over that fort, right?
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
Grand
So,
Rising Bones. It says, yeah, they not only did they take over the fort, but they defeated Colonel Archibald Montgomery in Macon County in June 1760, and later captured. They later captured Fort Loudon.
okay. Yeah, I can't wait to tackle these forts.
Yeah, hopefully the names will be a lot easier to pronounce.
Yeah, Fort Adams is one of the ones I know. That's all right.
So then it goes on to read that Oconostota became the first beloved man of Cherokee following the death of his cousin, Attakullakulla. Okay, so Oconostota came after Attakullakulla, sometime around 1775 through 1777. It says his tenure, meaning Oconostota, was fraught with warfare and struggle, which accumulated in 1780 in the destruction of Chota and Tennessee by American revolutionary forces during the rebellion against the British and their allies. Many histories state that Oconostota went to England in either 1730 or 1762, but he was not a member of either delegation. Oconostota was believed to have died in either 1782 or 1783. He was buried with his hands on his chest, holding a broadsword pointing down his body. That's interesting. I wonder what that represents, because obviously that was some type of ritual. Anybody in the uh, Chickamauga tribe knows that burial um, poses for? That would be very interesting. I'm sure Doodle Vision may have some information on that. But what I find interesting, I know, right? Or they copied it from the Catawba.
Yeah, I was about to say
But the thing that interests me is that it further up the paragraph it reads that Oconostota went to England in 1730 or 1762. Now you're talking about basically a 28-year difference, but not as a member of either delegation. So that means tribes or Indians who had boats were traveling back and forth to England, not necessarily being represented.
yeah.
Represented.
You mean like on leisure?
Well, not necessarily on leisure, but they
Not
not
representing the
yeah
tribe.
yeah not necessarily going for business. They were just going
Wow.
because they said he
Wow.
wasn't representing either delegation. So when I'm thinking that delegation, I'm talking about any delegation of Parliament or of England at the time, meaning that he wasn't sent for. He just went. Now,
Right.
if I'm
Yeah.
reading it wrong, please correct me. But that's what it's looking
I'm
like.
gathering the same thing. I'm not sure. Yeah. If anybody else has any qualms about that, let us know.
Mooney says, Golden Moon says, Mooney or Moon was my nickname when I was a kid. All right, Golden. Let's find out you part Chickamauga. So yeah, again, It's not. It doesn't appear that Indian tribes traveling back and forth across the waters, across different continents, it was a normal thing to do. So I want to go back up. Yeah, I know we haven't got to Asanako yet. Yeah, we haven't got to Asanako yet. But this is interesting because it says that Oconostota, he was may have been influenced by a German utopian. First of all, what is a German utopian? And I know there were Germans up north at this particular
Yeah,
time. Um,
a German utopian.
yeah, that's what it says. German utopian, spelled Utopian. German utopian. And his name is Christian Preiber. P as in Paul, R as in Richard, I as in India, B as in Berber, E as in Echo, R as in Romeo. Christian Preiber. So I want to know who this Christian Preiber is. So it's time to start digging.
Me too.
All right. So I'm going to put this in the chat. All right. Christian Gottlieb Preiber. Born March 21st, 1697, Zittau, Germany. And he died in Fredericia, Georgia. And it said on March 21st, 1697 through 1744, was a German immigrant with legal training who immigrated to the British colonies of North America with a vision of establishing a utopian commonwealth among Cherokee and other Native Americans living in the southeast, viewed by the Cherokee as a beloved man. They go that word beloved again. Preiber fell afoul of the ruling British for his visions against the envisioned commonwealth holding private property and his support for their providing sanctuary to runaway slaves and debtors. After colonial authorities demanded his surrender, British allied Creeks captured him in 1743, and he died during his imprisonment by the British in Fredericia, Georgia. Now, you know what I find a little strange about this? And it basically proves that these countries knew about these tribes before they got here, that they weren't found by mistake or by accident. It said that Christian, who was a legally trained immigrant, they didn't say what he was legally trained in. He immigrated to the British colonies of North America, and he had a vision of establishing a utopian commonwealth among Cherokee. So when you have a vision of something, that means that's forethought, that's planning. That's not something that just happens. So they knew about the tribes that was here. So it wasn't they thought they were coming to India. But they didn't come here by mistake. They came here with a direct and explicit desire, knowing exactly who they were going to come in contact with. And also because we're reading that numerous tribes were traveling to Europe of their own free will and was involved in commerce with these continents. So to me, this just further proves what some of us already knew, and makes you raise an eyebrow when anyone tries to say that the Europeans came over here thinking that this was India, and that they were not looking for Indians or Indias, meaning people of God. So his early life, Christian Gottlieb Preiber was born on March 21st, 1697 in Zittau, Electorate of Saxony, to Frederick Preiber, a linen merchant and beer house owner, and Anna Dorothea Bergman. Preiber studied law at Erfurt University, where in October 1722 he will publish his first dissertation, The Use of the Study of Roman Law and the Ignorance of that Law in the Public Life of Germany. So now we know what he studied. He studied law. So he came here, when he came to the British colonies in North America, with the explicit vision of establishing a utopia and commonwealth with Cherokee Native Americans. And when the British colonies found out, they had their, I guess for lack of a better term, their viceroyalty, the Cherokee, capture him because he was supporting and providing sanctuary to runaway slaves and debtors. And we know that when they talk about runaway slaves, they're talking about Indians that were captured and put into servitude. Let's not be tricked into thinking when you see slaves, it automatically means they were African or they were not of Indian descent. So, anything you want to add to that, Bones or No Sellout? Christian Gottlieb Pryberg, a lawyer.
Shaking my head like my. Oh, Johnny Gill.
Get out of my head. As soon as you said my, I was going to go there, Johnny. Grand Rising Comprendio, if you are able to come on into the chat, please do so. Come on to the panel, please do so. The link has been sent to you. Yeah. But it lets you know that regardless of what faction or tribe that we speak about or is presented, there always appears to be some involvement, whether minor or major, with Europeans. I don't know. And this is Christian Gottlieb Pryberg. And he apparently, according to this document, according to Wikipedia, had some influence on Oconostota.
Sound like another version of Joseph Brant to me.
Joseph Brant and who's the other one? His cousin, Cornstalk. Deeper Wico. What you say? No Sellout.
I said he's talking corn. Was it corn planter or corn stalk?
What is it? I think it was corn. Man, don't give me a style.
Corn planter, I believe.
Corn planter. Yeah, thank you for that.
You got the turkey stalker and you got the corn stalker. Sorry, somebody out there named corn stalker.
I'm sure it is, but I want to make sure we talk about the right Indian stuff. So my apologies out there.
That's all right. If it was that, I'm not.
It's stalk and turkey was Oconostota. That's what they called them. Oh, that's what the Europeans translated it as.
Yeah, he gonna call himself mole sausage.
Yeah, that was crazy. Groundhog sausage, dude.
Well, we know who won't be writing people's names down.
But so basically, that's me and No Sellout, right?
No.
Just making a bad go. He didn't mispronounce a letter. He just made up a whole.
Ain't that the same animal? I don't know, man. My bad. I got my burrowing animal, varmint, whatever you want to call it, wrong.
Look. And Free is helping us out here. She says utopia, a group of people who are attempting to establish a new social pattern based upon a vision of the ideal society. Yeah, so it goes back to what I was thinking. To have a utopia and to have a vision, that means you already know about the people. You already know they exist. You can't create a utopia with some people that you don't even know exist. So.
Sound like something that you need to get a shot to get rid of.
David Carey says he can't hear you, Bones. Let me see.
Mic check 1 2 1 1 2.
Are y'all having a problem hearing Bones? Hold on. Really, No Sellout, not to be confused with the bottle drink Fruitopia.
I typed it so it wouldn't have to be said. He said, I might as well say.
Hiwassee.
Can y'all hear no sellout? I mean, can y'all hear Bones? We know y'all can hear no sellout. Can everybody hear Bones? If y'all having a hard time hearing Bones, let me know.
Mic check. 1, 1, 2. How everybody doing this rising? Peace, peace.
Okay, David says he can hear you. Alright. So now we're gonna go and read about Attakullakulla. I'm gonna go ahead and repost the link. I done sent you a link in between that one and okay. Copper Color Queen says she heard you too. So okay. So now I'm reinserting the link to Attakullakulla. And this is funny because it reads, this article relies too much on references to primary sources. I don't know if that's a bad thing. If it is, I don't know why.
Yeah, I heard when y'all said that earlier. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Okay. So for those that, that are banging on Wikipedia, understandably so, sometimes the sources are not verifiable, like the source for Oconostota. But this one is about Attakullakulla, and it said that it's relying too much on references to primary sources. So I don't know. So
Was too many primaries, not enough secondaries?
I guess it says please improve this by adding secondary or tertiary sources. That's what it says. But bro. So Attakullakulla is his name, and it means man killer big head. You cannot make this up. Attakullakulla, which basically means man killer big head. Also known by the honorific epithet Jude's friend, was a Cherokee skiaguster or orator and leading figure in diplomacy with British colonial authorities. The name Attakullakulla was a warrior's title, and he earned it at an early age. He also used the English translation man killer. So let me get this straight. He was not only a warrior, but he was a Cherokee skiaguster, orator, and leading figure in diplomacy with British colonial authorities. So that means he was instrumental in speaking with and having diplomatic ties with British colonial authorities. Which basically means what? He was influenced by them. That's what I'm saying. If I'm incorrect, please correct me. So it says Attakullakulla was a war chief or skiagusta. So a skiagusta in Cherokee is a war chief, and it says he was a war chief of the Cherokee town Tamatuli. It says Tamatuli. It reads a prehistoric and historic Native American site in Monroe County, Tennessee, in southeastern United States, occupied as early as the Archaic period. The Tamatuli site had the most substantial periods of habitation during the Mississippian period, likely when the earthwork mounds were formed. That's got some history to it. And it goes on to read that Attakullakulla was probably born in Great Hiwassee, and he resided with Great Toliko, becoming Skiagusta. Later in life, he migrated to the town of Ultiwa during the Cherokee American Wars. Um, then it goes on to speak of his French and Indian War action. During the French and Indian War, Asanako at first aided the colony of Virginia against the French and the Shawnee, traveling over 3,500 miles on foot and by canoe. In 1756, he led 130 Cherokee in a joint Virginia-Cherokee campaign on the frontier of what is now West Virginia. In 1757 and 1758, his war party raided the French stronghold at Fort Duquesne, present-day Pittsburgh. Yeah, you travel over 3,500 miles by foot and by canoe. Yeah, I think that would consider you to be a great warrior. If nothing else, a great warrior. So then it goes on and talks about the expeditionary party comprising Lieutenant Henry Timberlake, Sergeant Thomas Sumter, John McCormick, an interpreter, and an unnamed servant arrived in Overhill Town in Tomatley on December 20th, where they were greeted by one of the leading men in the town, Asanako, who was visiting from Kiowa. After spending several days in Tomatley as guests of Asanako, Timberlake and his interpreter proceeded to Overhill, mother town of Chota, where a number of chiefs had gathered in the town's larger council house. Asanako gave a speech and ceremonially buried a hatchet in the ground, symbolizing a state of peace between the English and the Cherokee afterwards. Timberlake took part in a peace ceremony in which he smoked several ceremonial pipes with the gathered chiefs, a practice Timberlake personally found very disagreeable, but participated without openly complaining. That's interesting. They will find smoking a pipe with chiefs disagreeable. So basically, the Cherokee, when they had a ceremony, when they buried the hatchet in the ground, it basically meant it was a symbol of peace. It was like a treaty. So that is an official ceremony. Now I know we had read it before, but it's just always interesting to hear it or read it again. I don't know. No, Salah, what you think about that? That whole bury the hatchet thing and peace pipe.
Just want to trace the history, see how far back it goes.
Say again?
I just want to trace the history and see how far back it goes. Some of these things, remember the other one with the sword pointing down with his arms crossed and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to see what these rituals, where they originated.
Got it. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Like I said, it's interesting to see how a lot of our slang and terminology comes. People say let's bury the hatchet. Let's stop the argument. Let's stop the feuding. And it's actually a Indian practice. So I think that's
crazy. Let me see. Free says, so what's the significance of George Washington chopping down the cherry tree in light of that tradition?
I don't know, Free. That's a good question. Matter of fact, that would be one we can ask Doodle Vision. So, cool. So that was Atasiti Astanako, aka Man Killer Big Head, which is the European's translation of it. He was a Skiagusta, which is a war chief, an orator, and leading figure in diplomacy with British colonial authorities. So, want to make sure we had some context with some of these names that we were talking about. So, now we're going to go back to Dragging Canoe. Remember, him and other militant leaders were looking at burning the towns and doubling back and attacking the Virginia colonists. So it goes on to read in the second paragraph under migration of Chickamauga. Second paragraph, third sentence. Afterward, he and other militant leaders, including Asanako, gathered like-minded Cherokee with Overhill Valley from the Overhill Valley and hill towns and migrated to what is now the Chattanooga, Tennessee area, where the great Indian warpath crossed the Chickamauga River, south of Chickamauga Creek. So basically, Dragging Canoe, Asanako, and uh, what was the other Indian's name? Can't find it. Oh, Oconostota. They actually went to Chickamauga. And then some other Cherokees turned up in Pensacola and wintered there. And this brings up something that's interesting that I don't think some of us, because I'm sure there are some people that talk about this, but I don't think we talk about this enough. When it gets cold, when the temperatures are not agreeable to the Indians, they don't stay there and weather the storm. They go where it's warm. Because it states here that other Cherokee refugees turned up in Pensacola and wintered there. So obviously that was them going south for the warmth is something that they did. But this time they went there as refugees because they had left the original Cherokee tribe. Does that make sense? Or am I missing something?
I agree with that.
Again, if there's anything that we're saying that is not true or accurate, please correct us. That's what we're here for. So then I'm going to read the last paragraph, and then you can pick up on the treaties of 1777. Hold on. It says the British Deputy Indian Superintendent. Hold on. Okay, so I got two paragraphs to read. John McDonald already had a trading post across the Chickamauga River. This provided a link to Henry Stewart, brother of John, in the West Florida capital of Pensacola. Cameron, the British Deputy Indian Superintendent, accompanied Dragging Canoe to Chickamauga. Nearly all the whites legally resident among the Cherokee were part of the related exodus. So not only did many Cherokee Indians leave with Dragging Canoe, it says nearly all the whites that were legally residents among the Cherokee were part of this related exodus as well. Yeah, Free, I'm with you. I'm not too fond of cold climates. Then it goes on to read, in March 1777, Cameron sent the refugees to Chickamauga along with a sizable amount of goods. The colonials learned of the material and planned to intercept it. When Cameron informed him of the danger, Hiwassee, paramount chief of the Upper Muskogee, sent a force of 350 warriors to guard them as well as to assist rebuilding and waging war. Now, do you remember where they get the term paramount chief comes from? Who determines a paramount chief? Y'all remember? A European commander gives a chief the title of paramount chief. That means he's the chief of all chiefs. So just keep that in mind. So these are titles that are given to these chiefs from other high-ranking officials in European countries. So something to keep in mind. So you figure this time point in 1777, the refugees, the Cherokee refugees moving to Chickamauga, them and several supplies were guarded by the Muskogee to help rebuild and get ready for war. So, something to think about. Now, sell out. Are you ready to read the treaties of 1777, or do you need me to read it?
My son just woke up. Give me 1 second.
All right, I'll go ahead and read it, bro. Take your time, do what you do. So we're going to go ahead and start reading the treaties of 1777. And free states that this is the United States of James Carter here. I'm the president. I'm the emperor. I'm the king. I'm Michael Jackson. You Tito. You know what? I came with you free. But that is funny. So, treaties of 1777. Preliminary negotiations between the Overhill Towns and Virginia were held at Fort Patrick Henry in April 1777. Nathaniel Gist, later father of Sequoia, led the talks for Virginia, while Attakullakulla, Oconostota, and Savanuka headed the delegation of the Cherokee. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there for a second because this is interesting. It says Nathaniel Gist, later the father of Sequoia. We're definitely going to dig deep into that one. I know Sequoia are a tribe. So you had a treaty between the Overhill Town, which is where the Chickamauga ended up residing, and the Virginia colonists. And this negotiation for the Treaty of 1777, preliminary negotiations were held in Fort Patrick Henry. And then it goes on to read, the Cherokee signed the Treaty of DeWitt's Corner with Georgia and South Carolina on May 20th, and the Treaty of Fort Henry with Virginia and North Carolina on July 20th. They promised to stop warring with those colonies, promising in return to protect them from attack. In the Treaty of DeWitt's Corner, the lower towns ceded all their land in modern South Carolina, except for a small strip of what is now Oconee County. One provision of the Treaty of Fort Henry required that James Robertson and a small garrison be quartered at Chota on the Little Tennessee. He had been appointed Superintendent of Indian Affairs for North Carolina, while Joseph Martin had been appointed Superintendent of Indian Affairs for Virginia. Now y'all remember what the superintendent's job was, right? They were originally agents. Remember, the titles got changed to superintendents along the way. And the agent's job was to indoctrinate and teach the Indians how to become more Europeanized and be more acceptable and, for lack of better terms, civilized. And I'm using air quotes. So, once these treaties were signed, the Cherokee again forfeited land to the colonists. Every time there's a treaty signed, some land gets turned over. Y'all notice that? At least that's my observation. So, I want to go back up to the beginning in a paragraph where it talks about the treaties of 1777, and we're looking at the name Nathaniel Gist, later the father of the Sequoia, and he led the talks for Virginia. While Attakullakulla, Oconostota, and Savanuka headed the delegation of Cherokee. So who is this Nathaniel Gist? I'm gonna get your ass on. Comprehension reads civilization or Indians, acculturation. Exactly. So here's the link to Nathaniel Gist. Copy in it says, kill the Indian and save the man. Captain Richard H. Patch on the education of Native Americans. Yeah. Exactly. So we're gonna go back and start to read about Nathaniel Gist. So Nathaniel Gist was born October 15th, 1733 in Baltimore, province of Maryland. He died in 1812, Canewood Plantation, Clark County, Kentucky. He served in the United States Infantry. He reached the rank of colonel, and he had wars in Braddock Expedition, Forbes Expedition, Cherokee War, Battle of Palos Hook, and Siege of Charleston. So he was a American soldier, and his allegiance was to the United States. Okay, so I guess they're taking he's an Indian who had allegiance to the United States. It says he was born in Maryland and fought during the French and Indian War, which is also known as the 7-Year War, which was the first World War, and the American Revolutionary War. He was reputed to be the father of Sequoyah, the famous Cherokee by Werther Watts. Like his father, Christopher Gist, he served in Braddock's expedition in 1755 and the Forbes expedition, 1758. The outbreak of the American Revolution found him on the frontier. At first suspected of sympathizing with the British, he convinced the Americans of his loyalty. So at first they thought he was sympathizing with the British, but he convinced them of his loyalty. George Washington, a close friend of his father's, authorized him to form Gist Additional Continental Regiment in January 1777. Gist probably participated in Light Horse Harry Lee's Palos Hook raid in 1779. He and his regiment were captured at the Siege of Charleston in May 1780. After the war, he took an American wife, Judith Carey Bell, and a couple had 4 daughters, one of whom married Francis P. Blair. He is variously said to have died in 1796, 1812, or the end of the War of 1812. He is confused with his uncle Nathaniel Gist, who died in 1780. He was the first cousin of Mordecai Gist. So he was in fact an Indian that he was a Sequoyah Indian, a Sequoyah of the famous Cherokee.
He was the father of Sequoyah.
The father of Sequoyah, the famous Cherokee. And Sequoyah was an American Cherokee polymath. In 1821, he completed his independent creation of Cherokee syllabary, making reading and writing in Cherokee possible. This was one of the very few times in recorded history that a member... Hold on. Very few times in history where a recorded history that a member of a pre-literate people created an original effective writing system. Another example being Shang Lu Yang. After seeing its worth, the people of Cherokee Nation rapidly began to use his syllabary and officially adopted in 1825. Their literacy rate quickly surpassed that of surrounding European American settlers. Now that's interesting. So when you get a chance, go look up Sequoyah, who was the son of Nathaniel Gist. I'll put the link in the chat. Free reads. The plan to shape the Indian after another's image and likeness has been in play for quite some time now. Hence, all the digging we have been doing to find the hidden pieces of our story. That's facts, Free. Change who we are as a people to be more like them, I guess. So that was Nathaniel Gist. I just wanted to shed some light on who that individual was. And we also have to remember, this is more for me than y'all. I have to remember that just because I see a name that looks European, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're European. It could be an Indian that took on a European name. So it just looks out of place. Uh,
Yep.
all right. So where are we at? Oh yeah, I'm at um, I'm at the end of the paragraph of the treaties of 1777, and I'll read the last sentence again. It says, "He had been appointed superintendent of Indian affairs," and he that being James Robertson. In North Carolina, and Joseph Martin had been appointed superintendent of Indian affairs in Virginia. And before we go to targets of Cherokee, I want to see who this Joseph Martin is, because they got him highlighted for a reason. And I'm going to put this link in the chat as well. So Joseph Martin is actually being credited with being a superintendent for the American Indians in Virginia. Joseph Martin Jr. was a brigadier general in the Virginia militia during the American Revolutionary War, in which Martin's frontier diplomacy with the Cherokee people is credited with not only averting Indian attacks on Scottish Irish Americans and English American settlers who helped win the battles of Kings Mountain and Cowpens, but with also helping to keep the Indians' position neutral and from siding with the British troops during those crucial battles. Historians agree that the settlers' success at these two battles signaled the turning of the tide of the Revolutionary War in favor of the Americans. I'm going to read that again. It says, Martin's frontier diplomacy with the Cherokee people is credited with not only averting Indian attacks on Scottish Irish Americans and English American settlers, but with also helping to keep the Indians' position neutral and from siding with British troops during those crucial battles. So how do y'all think he helped keep them neutral? It says historians agree that the settlers' success at these two battles signaled the turning point, or the turn of the tide of the Revolutionary War in favor of the Americans. So if it wasn't for him keeping these Cherokee neutral and from attacking, then it's likely that the Americans would look a little bit different, huh? At least that's what they're intimating here. It says Martin was born in Caroline County, Virginia, and later lived at Albemarle County and then in Henry County, Virginia, at his plantation Belmont on Leatherwork Creek in Martinsville, not far from the plantation of his friend, Governor Patrick Henry, Leatherwood Plantation. General Martin led many positions during his public life. As a very young man, he first tried his hand at farming. Next, he worked for 3 years as an overseer on a huge plantation of his local Virginia kin. Next, he was a long hunter and an explorer on the frontier for friend Patrick Henry, and then an early pioneer and builder of Martin's stations in the Wild West. A surveyor of Kentucky and North Carolina and Tennessee and Virginia borders, an Indian agent, Indian fighter for Patrick Henry, a member at peace treaties with the Indians, and along with Dr. Thomas Walker, Joseph Martin named the Cumberland region and the Cumberland River. He served as a member of the legislatures of Virginia, Georgia, and North Carolina. He was lifelong friends with General Thomas Sumter, and he was also friends and brothers-in-law with Colonel Benjamin Cleveland, both married grave sisters. He was unsuccessfully nominated by Patrick Henry to the position of first governor of the Southwest Territory and was the holder of over 80,000 acres across southeastern U.S. at one point. The city of Martinsville, Virginia was named in his honor during his lifetime. So he was a surveyor of the Kentucky, North Carolina, and the Tennessee, Virginia borders, an Indian agent, Indian fighter for Patrick Henry. So remember when we talked about the surveyor's job working with the squatters? So we're looking at one of the surveyors who helped establish the Kentucky, North Carolina, and Tennessee, Virginia borders, along with squatters and immigrants, because he was also an Indian agent. How are you an Indian agent and an Indian fighter? I'm just saying. Just saying. Yeah. So Martinsville, Virginia is named after Joseph Martin. David Carey said Cowboys and Indians. Double agent. Free says all around the world the same song. Yep, history continues to repeat itself. So again, just wanted to give some context to the individuals that we were dealing with. And like Free mentioned earlier, superintendent is nothing more than an Indian agent, just a title change. So now we're moving on to targets of the Cherokee. So don't sit up.
Yep.
You ready for this?
Yes, I am.
Alright.
I may be on the wrong page. Hold on. I was looking at Sequoia. Let me go back.
Yeah, we're back on the Cherokee American Wars. Targets of the Cherokee. Copper Indio says double cross.
Never get right.
Sound good.
Migration. I'm getting there. Targets.
Yep, targets of the Cherokee.
All right. Grand Rising, y'all. Mic check.
Loud and clear. Go ahead.
All right. From their new bases, this is targets of the Cherokee. From their new bases, the Cherokee conducted raids against the settlers on the Holston, Doe, Watauga, and Nolichucky rivers, on the Cumberland and Red rivers, and those in the isolated frontier stations in between. The Cherokee ambushed parties traveling on the Tennessee River and on local sections of the many ancient trails that served as highways, such as the Great Indian Warpath, Mobile to northeast Canada, the Sitka and the St. Augustine Trail, St. Augustine to the French Salt Lick at Nashville, and the Cumberland Trail from the Upper Creek Path to the Great Lakes, and the Nickajack Trail, Nickajack to the Augusta. Later, the Cherokee stalked the Natchez Trace and roads improved by the uninvited settlers, such as Kentucky, Cumberland, and Walton roads. Occasionally, the Cherokee attacked targets in Virginia, the Carolinas, Georgia, Kentucky, and the Ohio country. In contempt of the peace proceedings at Fort Henry in April 1777, Dragging Canoe led a war party that killed a settler named Frederick Calvert and stole 15 horses from James Robertson, then moved to Carter's Valley, killing the grandparents of David Crockett, along with several children near the modern Rogersville, and marauding across the valley. In all, the raiders took 12 scalps. In summer 1777, Deputy Superintendents Cameron and Tate led a large contingent of Cherokee and Muskogee warriors against the backcountry settlements of the Carolinas and Georgia. The Cherokee established a camp at the confluence of the Tennessee and Ohio rivers near present-day Paducah, Kentucky. I might be right, I'm pronouncing that wrong. To prevent infiltration into the Mississippi in the spring of 1778.
Stop right there.
Oh, I will. And I did. Hold up, man. This man doing marauding and stuff. He's a marauder.
Marauding. I know, right? Makes me think of a Trap Called Quest. Midnight Marauder. Brother James is definitely rubbing off on us.
Not too much.
So, Dragging Canoe, he led a war party that killed a settler named Frederick Calvert, stole 15 horses from James Robertson, moved to Calvert's Valley, killing the grandparents of Davy Crockett, along with several children near the modern Rogersville. So this must have been personal. Free was thinking the same thing I was thinking. She's like, wait, he killed the grandparents of Davy Crockett? She said, this is starting to sound more and more like reality TV. Ain't it though?
Yeah, you know, right? What was they, just standing on the road when he was coming through on horseback? I don't know. It was like, who was that? I don't know. And then scalp.
So he took 17 scalps, 15 horses.
15,
Was it
15
12? No, it
horses.
was 12 scalps.
12 scalps, 15 horses, a partridge in a pear tree, and let me see, a bunch of other more. And I lost my place.
Free says, why haven't they made all this a movie? I don't know. Maybe they waiting.
Titans Assembly Production Studio. This is a problem. Our first installment.
Pamela Hall says, that's too much like that's too much like that's too much like telling the truth. Well, it's gonna come out. Know that to be true. So things are starting to heat up. Cherokee ain't playing. They're definitely on a warpath. So can you go ahead and read the Revolutionary War Phase Southern Strategy from 1778 to 1783, please, sir?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
In late 1778, British strategy shifted south. As their attention went, so too did their efforts, their armies, and their supplies, including those slated for the Southern Indians. The Southern Theater had the added advantage of being home to more loyalists than the North. With all these new advantages, the Cherokee were able to greatly renew their territorial defense. Both the Cherokee and the Upper Creek signed on for active participation.
So here, it looks like they're this is a point in time before the everything started to go bad for the British. Because right now it looks like they're doing well, right? Because they said the Southern Theater had advantage of being home to more loyalists in the North. So I guess this is where the things started to go bad for the British. Since with all these advantages, the Cherokee were able to greatly renew their territorial defenses. Both the Cherokee and Upper Creek signed on for active participants. Right, because now the next paragraph is when they start talking about the victories in the North and the battles. And the next paragraph after that's going to be talking about the battles in the South. So they're going to start becoming more detailed as far as what happens and what the plans were. So if you don't mind, sir, can you go ahead and light these people up with the British victory in the North?
All right. Peace, doo-doo. On December 17th, 1778, Henry Hamilton captured Fort Vincennes, looks like Vincennes, and used it as a base to plan a spring offensive against George Rogers Clark. whose forces had recently seized control of much of the Illinois country. His plans were to assemble 500 warriors from various Indian nations, including the Cherokee, the Chickasaw, the Shawnee, and others, for a campaign to expel Clark's forces back east, then drive through Kentucky, clearing American settlements. McDonald's headquarters at Chickamauga was to be the staging ground and commissary for the Cherokee and the Muskogee. Clark recaptured Fort Vincennes and Hamilton along with it on February 25th, 1779, after the siege of Fort Vincennes. The Chickamauga Cherokee turned their sights to the northeast.
Grand Rising, Doodle Vision. He said, "Woo, made it in. Glad to have you, bro. Got the link, so whenever you get a chance, come on in."
So, resident historian over here.
Yeah.
Siege of Fort Vincennes is also the Siege of Fort Sackville.
Okay.
I think I like saying that better.
Alright, so go ahead and read the battles in the Deep South, because I guess this is where things are going to take a turn for the worse for the British.
Hold on, let's see what this thing is doing. Every time I click something, it takes me back to the beginning of where we started this rising. So let me get, there we go. Battle of the Deep South. The British captured Savannah on December 29th, 1778, with help from Dragging Canoe, John McDonald, and the Cherokee, along with McGillivray's Upper Muskogee Force, and McIntosh's band of Hittichitty warriors. Just over a month later, January 31st, 1779, they captured Augusta, Georgia, as well, though they quickly had to retreat. With these victories, the remaining neutral towns of the lower Muskogee threw in their lot with the British side. Thomas Brown of the King's Carolina Rangers was assigned to the Atlantic District to work with the Cherokee, Muskogee, and Seminole. Charlestown was captured on May 12th, 1780, after a siege that began March 29th. Along with it, the British took prisoner some 3,000 patriots, including South Carolina militia leader Andrew Williamson. Upon giving his parole that he would not again take up arms, Williamson became a double agent for the Patriots, according to testimony after the war by Patriot General Nathaniel Greene.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That deserves one of these. Upon giving his parole that he would not again take up arms, Williamson became a double agent for the Patriots. See, I know the Patriots are the Virginia colonies. According to testimonies after the war of Patriot General Nathaniel Greene. Interesting. Because remember, Dragging Canoe and the Muskogee are siding with the colonies. So you basically have Cherokee fighting Cherokee. Where one particular time, at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, the Cherokee were fighting on the side of the British. So you go from Cherokee fighting on the side of the British in 1776 to 1777 to 1778. You have the Cherokee divided fighting each other. Nothing but another civil war. So, like they say, wars are fought by proxy. And the Indians were the proxy. Let's see, is there anything that we need to cover? Can you go ahead and read the Fort Nashboro, right, the paragraph right below that, please, sir? Unless you lost it.
You know that I'm looking for it. Okay, one second, one second. Every time I venture off, man, it just takes me back to the beginning where I was struggling to find in the first place. What is going on? Okay, okay, I think I got it. Hold on. You said Fort Nashboro.
Yeah, Fort Nashboro.
What'd you say, Bone?
He caught you with the dun.
All right, Fort Nashboro. In early 1779, Robertson and John Donaldson traveled overland along the Kentucky Road and founded Fort Nashboro on the Cumberland River. It was the first of many such settlements in the Cumberland area, which subsequently became the focus of attacks by all the tribes in the surrounding region. Leaving a small group there, both returned east. In autumn 1779, Robertson and a group of fellow Wataugans left the east down the Kentucky Road, headed for Fort Nashboro. They arrived on Christmas Day, 1779, without incident. Donaldson journeyed down the Tennessee River with a party that included his family, intending to go across to the mouth of the Cumberland, then upriver to Fort Nashboro. They departed the East Tennessee settlements on February 27, 1780. Eventually, the group did reach its destination, but only after being ambushed several times. In the first encounter near Tuskegee Island on March 7th, did I read that right? Tuskegee Island on March 7th, the Cherokee warriors under Bloody Fellow attacked the boat in the rear. Its passengers had come down with smallpox. They took as captive the one survivor, who was later ransomed by American colonists. The victory proved to be a Pyrrhic one for the Cherokee. A smallpox epidemic spread among its people, killing several hundred in the vicinity. Several miles downriver, beginning with the obstruction known as the Suck or the Kettle, the party was fired upon throughout their passage through the Tennessee River Gorge, Cache Canyon. One person died and several were wounded. At Muscle Shoals, the Donaldson party was attacked by Muskogee and Chickasaw up into Hardin County, Tennessee. The Donaldson party reached its destination on April 24th, 1780. The group included John's daughter, Rachel, the future wife of future U.S. Representative, Senator, and President Andrew Jackson, who fought a duel in her honor in 1806. Shortly after his party's arrival at Fort Nashboro, Donaldson, along with Robertson and others, formed the Cumberland Compact.
The Cumberland Compact.
They kind of left you out there too with that, like, oh yeah, they made it, but
I know, right?
he did.
It says that the Cherokee warriors under Bloody Fellow attacked the boat in its rear. Its passengers had come down with smallpox. They took as captive one survivor. So the survivor had smallpox, who was later ransomed by American colonists. The victory proved to be Pyrrhic, one for the Cherokee. A smallpox epidemic spread among its people, killing several hundred in the vicinity. So, which Cherokee are they talking about? So they talking about the Cherokee and the Bloody Fellow? And if so, Bloody Fellow fought on which side? He fight on the side of the North, the British, or did he fight on the side of the colonies? Just wondering. Because it doesn't really say. Because remember, you got Cherokee fighting Cherokee, so that's why I was asking. That's interesting. So President Andrew Jackson fought a duel in Rachel's honor. Rachel Donaldson. LJ Free says a cumbersome compact. Let's see what the Cumberland Compact is all about, shall we? I'll put this in the chat. And before I raise it right, so let's go over it. And it reads, the Cumberland Compact was both based on the early articles of the Watauga Association composed at present-day Elizabethton, Tennessee, and its foundation document of the Tennessee State Constitution. Signed on May 13, 1780, by early settlers led by the Cumberland River area by James Robertson and John Donaldson, where they settled Fort Nashboro, which later would become Nashville, Tennessee. So Fort Nashboro later became Nashville, Tennessee. The only surviving copy of the Cumberland Compact was discovered in 1846 inside a trunk that once belonged to Samuel Barton. The copy in Tennessee State Archives is slightly damaged. Other than that, this document is intact and legible. The Cumberland Compact was composed and signed by 256 colonists. One colonist, James Patrick of Virginia, was illiterate and marked his name with an X. The Constitution called for a governing council of 12 judges who would be elected by a vote of free men 21 years of age or older. Unique to the times, the compact included a clause that these judges could be removed from office by the people. Government salaries were to be paid in goods. Governors were paid 1,000 deerskins. Secretaries were paid 450 otter skins. County clerks were paid 500 raccoon skins, and the constables were paid 1 mink skin for every warrant served. All males 16 and older were subject to militia duty. The compact did establish a contract and relationship between the settlers of the Cumberland region and limited the punishment that would be meted out by the judicial system. Serious capital crimes were to be settled by transporting the offending party to a location under the direct jurisdiction of the state of North Carolina for a proper trial. The compact remained in effect until Tennessee became a state. Frontier law was brutal and effective. In 1788, at the first court session in Nashville, Andrew Jackson was granted permission to practice law. He was immediately handed the job of prosecuting attorney. In 1793, Judge John McNary sentenced Nashville's first horse thief, John McCain Jr., to be fastened to a wooden stock 1 hour for 39 lashes, his ears cut off, his cheeks branded with the letter H and T. The first female convicted of stealing soap and thread was stripped to the waist and publicly whipped 9 lashes. By 1800, the first divorce was granted between Mary and Nathaniel Parker. Henry Baker became the first capital punishment case in Davidson County, with the first death sentence of hanging by the neck until he's dead for stealing a horse. These records survive in the heavy leather-bound book in the care of the circuit court clerk. When they say those frontier laws are brutal, they ain't playing. Fastened to a wooden stock 1 hour for 39 lashes. Ears cut off and cheeks branded with H and T.
But ain't that what they said they were doing to the so-called African slaves? I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Ain't this the same supposed treatment that was supposed to be going on to so-called Africans? But when you read in history, the only stories that you have evidence on is it been happening to the Indians. Just saying.
Yeah, it doesn't say that John McCain Jr. was a slave. So yeah, that was a Cumberland Pact of Fort Nashboro, which later became Nashville, Tennessee. So it helps me put it in proper context anyway.
So Pamela Hall just asked where you was reading from. She kind of lost her footing.
I was reading from the Cumberland Pact. I put it in the chat. I just closed out of it. Hold on, I'll bring it back up and put it back in the chat. Give me a second.
The Cumberland Compact.
Yeah, the Cumberland Compact. What I call it?
The Cumberland Pact. Sorry, yeah, part of it. Under Fort Nashboro is where we're at once we drop that other. We probably have to drop the.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop both of them again.
Yeah, the OG link.
Let me do this. Tab. Yeah, y'all know how we do. We'll go off on from the main document in a minute, and how y'all.
In the rabbit hole.
I know, right? You be like,
yeah, hold on, wait a minute. I'm close.
Where y'all at, and how did we get here? Grand Rising Oak Cliff.
Oak Cliff. So where we're at on the so we went off on the Cumberland. Were you about to post the original link too?
Mm-hmm. I'm about to do that now. Yeah, about to do that now.
Where we're at under that is the Revolutionary War phase, Southern Strategy, 1778, 1783. I'll say it again once he posts the link.
Yep, just posted the link.
All right, so if you find the sections, we're in the Revolutionary War phase, Southern Strategy, 1778 to 1783, and we're reading Fort Nashboro. Fort Nashboro. Actually, nope, we're on Over Mountain Theater now, under Fort Nashboro.
Right. Now I'm lost. Hold on.
Oh man, that's funny. No, this is one of them section. There's a lot of sections in this one, but yeah, the Revolutionary War phase, Southern Strategy, 1778 to 1783. Right.
Don't get me started. Okay, so yeah, I found an Overland. Overland Compact was the last thing. The Cumberland Compact, Overland. The Cumberland Compact was the last thing that I clicked on under Fort Nashboro. Stop it.
Yep. And Over Mountain Theater is next.
Right.
Overland.
Stop it.
Sorry, it's Monday, right?
I know, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna blame it on Monday, y'all.
Yep.
This will be the last paragraph we read before we conclude, so everybody can get on with their day. So I'll go ahead and read it.
All right.
So, Over Mountain Theater. Robertson heard warning from Chota that Dragging Canoe's warriors were going to attack the Holston area. In addition, he had received intelligence that McDonald's Place was a staging area for the Northern Campaign that Hamilton had been planning to conduct, and that a stockpile of supplies equivalent to that of 100 pack horses was stored there. Small parties of Cherokee began repeated small raids on the Holston frontier shortly thereafter. Second paragraph. In the summer of 1780, Thomas Brown planned to have a joint conference between the Cherokee and Muskogee to plan ways to coordinate their attacks, but those plans were forestalled when Georgians, under Elijah Clark, made a concerted effort to retake Augusta in September, where he had his headquarters. His Kings Carolina Rangers and 550 Muskogee warriors formed the entire garrison against Clark's 700 fighters. So wait a minute. You had the Kings Carolina Rangers, and they don't give you a number, and 50 Muskogee formed the entire garrison against Clark's 700 fighters. The arrival of a sizable war party from the Chickamauga and Overhill Towns and a force from 49th in South Carolina prevented the capture of both the Cherokee and Brown's Rangers, chased Elijah Clark's army into the arms of John Seaver, wreaking havoc on rebellious settlements along the way. This set the stage for the Battle of Kings Mountain, October 7, 1780, in which Loyalist militia, American volunteers under Patrick Ferguson, moved south trying to encircle Clark. They were defeated by a force of 900 frontiersmen under Seaver and William Campbell, who were referred to as Overmountain Men. So this sounds like one of the few times where there was an actual confrontation between forces instead of just raiding of towns. At least that's what it looks like to me. Brown, aware that nearly 1,000 men were away from the American settlements with the militias, urged Dragging Canoe and other Cherokee leaders to strike while they had the opportunity. Under the influence of Savanuka, the Overhill Towns gave their full support to the new offense. Both Brown and the Cherokee had been expecting a quick victory by Patrick Ferguson and were stunned that he suffered such a resounding defeat so soon. But their planned assault on the settlement was in motion. Learning of the new invasion from Nancy Ward, the snitch, her second documented betrayal of Dragging Canoe, Virginia Governor Thomas Jefferson sent an expedition of 700 Virginians and North Carolinians against the Cherokee in December 1780 under the command of Seaver. The expedition routed a Cherokee war party at the Battle of Boyd's Creek on December 16th. After that battle, Seaver's army was joined by forces under Arthur Campbell and Joseph Martin. The combined force marched against the Overhill Towns on the Little Tennessee, and the Hiwassee burned 17 of them, including Chota, Chiloe, and original Sitco, Tellico, Great Hiwassee, and Chistowe, finishing up on January 1st, 1781. Afterwards, the Overhill leaders withdrew from further active conflict for a time, though warriors from the Middle and Valley towns continued to harass colonists on the frontier. Not long after returning home from his destruction of the Overhill Towns, Seaver had received word that the warriors from the Middle towns were bent on revenge. At the beginning of March, Seaver raised a force for a campaign against the Middle and Out towns east of the mountains, beginning at Tuskegee and ending at Cowie. They burned 15 towns, killed 29 Cherokee, and took 9 prisoners. I agree you don't want it. This is crazy. It's getting real. It's getting real personal and real brutal. While Dragging Canoe and his warriors turned their attention to the Cumberland, the Shawnee began raiding settlements in upper East Tennessee and southwest Virginia, the latter by now having become Washington County. In particular, they targeted those along the Clinch and Holston Rivers and the Powers Valley. These Shawnee came down from their homes on the Ohio River by way of the Warriors Path through the Cumberland Gap. Their attacks continued along with occasional forays by McGalvery's Upper Muskogee, even after sporadic raids by the Cherokee renewed, until they began to focus their attention on the Northwest Indian War. Another war, y'all. So these wars never end. They just keep going. In midsummer 1781, a party of Cherokee came west over the mountains and began raiding the new settlements on the French Broad River. Seaver raised a force of 150 and attacked their camp on Indian Creek. On July 26, 1781, the Overhill Towns signed the secondary Treaty of Long Island on the Holston, this time directly with Overmountain settlements. In response to incursions by new settlers beyond the limits of the treaties, warriors from the Chickamauga town began harassing the Holston frontier in the spring and summer of 1782. In September, an expedition under Seaver once again destroyed many of the towns in Chickamauga vicinity, and those Cherokee of the former lower towns, now in North Georgia, from Buffalo Town at the modern Ringgold, Georgia, south of Ustanley, near modern Calhoun, Georgia, including what he called Vanstown, as well as Illijay and Kuswati. Most of the towns were deserted because, having advance warning of the impending attack, Dragging Canoe and his fellow leaders chose relocation westward. Meanwhile, Seaver's army, guided by John Watts, somehow never managed to cross paths with any parties of Cherokee. So I'm going to go back up a little bit. And reread part of this paragraph, which is interesting because you're fighting in one conflict or one battle, right? And then it says their attacks continued along the occasional forays by McGalry's Upper Muskogee, even after sporadic raids by the Cherokee renewed until they began to focus their attention on the Northwest Indian War. So, how many wars were being fought? So they just went from one war to another. So you figure this is around 1781. So let's look at what the Northwest Indian War that took these Indians' attention away. And I put this in the chat. We're looking at the Northwest Indian War. Now, there's a warning here. It says this article includes a list of references, but its sources remain unclear because it has insufficient inline citations. Please help to improve this article by introducing more precise citations. So take this information with a grain of salt, people. So the Northwest Indian War was from 1785 to 1795. So this was 3 years after the Revolutionary War. Or 3 years after their involvement in the Revolutionary War, because this was around the time of 1781. It says also known as the Ohio War, Little Turtles War, and by others' names was the war between the United States and a confederation of numerous Native American tribes with support from British for control of Northwest Territory. It followed centuries of conflict over this territory, first among Native American tribes, and then with added shifting alliance among the tribes and the European powers of France and Great Britain and their colonists. I don't know if y'all heard that. It says the United States and confederation of numerous American tribes with support from British for control over Northwest Territory. This had followed centuries of conflict over this territory, first among Native American tribes, and then with added shifting alliances among the tribes with European powers and France and Great Britain. So there have been hundreds of years, because they say centuries, of conflict over this territory. First between tribes. So before the Europeans got involved, the tribes were trying to get this land. He says warmongering. Now, encouragement or advocacy of aggression toward other countries or groups. Adjective. Encouraging, advocating aggression toward other countries or groups. So this territory, this Northwest Territory, has been a territory that's been fought over for centuries. So this is not a new war. Just wanted to put that out there. So under the Treaty of Paris in 1783, which ended the American Revolutionary War, Great Britain ceded to the U.S. control of what were now known as Ohio Country and the Illinois Country, which were occupied by numerous Native American peoples. Despite the treaty, the British kept forts there and continued policies that supported Native Americans with the encroachments of European settlers west of Appalachians after the war. A Huron-led confederacy formed in 1785 to resist usurpation of Indian lands, declaring the lands north and west of Ohio River were Indian territory. President George Washington directed the United States Army to enforce U.S. sovereignty over the territory. The U.S. Army, consisting mostly of untrained recruits and volunteer militiamen, suffered a series of major defeats, including the Harmar Campaign of 1790 and St. Clair's defeat 1791. About 1,000 soldiers and militiamen were killed, and the United States forces suffered many more casualties than their opponents. So, it's saying that the Revolutionary War ended in 1783. And the British kept forts there even after the Revolutionary War and continued policies that supported the Native Americans with the encroachment of European settlements. So let me get this straight. The British lose the war, and I'm using air quotes. And even after they lose the war, they still have forts in this area. Not only do they have forts, but they are still continue with policies that support Native Americans with the encroachment of European settlements west of the Appalachians after the war. So how is that possible if the British lost the war? What am I missing? Somebody? Anybody?
This sounds like the make it up as you go story.
Bueller. Anyone? Bueller.
But am I missing something? Am I misreading this?
You and all of us here listening to it and going along with it. Like every Rising show, we dig up something that ain't lining up with the timeline they taught you in history or his story.
Mm-hmm. Peace, Susquehanna.
And this is 2 years after the war is over. And the United States has declared victory. Or declared victorious.
Like Jay said, them loyalists.
And, you know, 1,000 soldiers ain't nothing to piece y'all. They got mollywopped. And this was all the way up until 1791. So I'm going to go on and continue to read. After St. Clair's disaster, Washington ordered Revolutionary War hero General Mad Anthony Wayne to organize and train a proper fighting force. Wayne took command of the New Legion of the United States late in 1792. After a methodical campaign up the Great Miami and Wami River valleys in western Ohio County, he led his men to a decisive victory at the Battle of Fallen Timbers near southwestern Lake Erie in 1794. Afterward, he went to establish Fort Wayne at the Miami capital of Chickamauga, in the symbol of U.S. sovereignty in the heart of Indian country. The defeated tribes were forced to cede extensive territory, including much of present-day Ohio, in the Treaty of Greensville in 1795. The Jay Treaty in the same year arranged for secession of British Great Lakes outposts on the great U.S. territory. So this treaty was signed and everything was done in 1795. More than 12 years after the Treaty of Paris was signed, which signified the ending of the Revolutionary War. I don't know. Am I missing something? Grand Rising, Jay Susquehanna. I don't know. I could be missing something.
Well, shout outs to Jay for sending all the pictures to Autonomous Assembly. And like I said, if you got any more you want to send them. I'm just lining them all up for a video. Very interesting video.
So yeah, we were I just posted a link for the North Indian War, and that's what we were reading because some of the Indians, some of the Cherokee went from fighting the Chickamauga War to fighting in the Northwest Indian War. And the Northwest Indian War was from 1785 to 1795. So basically, it's just an extension of the Revolutionary War. So, revisionist history, I tell you. So now we're back. The Cherokee American War. I'm going to put the link back in the back chat. So where was I? Oh yeah. So yeah, I just finished reading the Over Mountain Theater. I think we got a little bit more. I'm gonna read a little bit more. I'm gonna read one more paragraph, and that's attacks at Chickamauga. And it reads, at the beginning of April 1779, a group of 300 Cherokee and 50 Loyalist Rangers under Walter Scott left the Chickamauga towns headed for a marauding campaign against the frontier settlements in Georgia and South Carolina. Hearing of their departure, Joseph Martin, who was an Indian agent for the Americas at Chota, sent word to Governor Patrick Henry of their absence. The state governments of Virginia and North Carolina made a joint decision to send an expedition against the Chickamauga towns, who were thought to be responsible for the raids. Most of those warriors, however, were in South Carolina with Cameron and Dragging Canoe. 1,000 over mountain men under Evan Shelby, father of Isaac Shelby, first governor of the state of Kentucky, and a regiment of Continentals under John Montgomery disembarked on April 10th, boating down the Tennessee in a fleet of dugout canoes. Here's another thing people got to realize. A lot of these wars and a lot of the traveling that's going on is not done on foot. They're in canoes, which allows them to travel a lot more territory in a short amount of time and allow them to save their actions. They arrived at the Chickamauga town 10 days later. For the next 2 weeks, they destroyed the 11 towns in the immediate area and most of the food supply along the McDonald's home store and commissary. Because the warriors were on a campaign in Georgia and South Carolina, there was no resistance and only 4 deaths among the inhabitants. Whatever was not destroyed was confiscated and sold at what became known as Sale Creek. Upon hearing of the devastation of the towns and loss of all their stores, Dragging Canoe, McDonald, and their men, including the Rangers, returned to Chickamauga and its vicinity. The Shawnee sent envoys to Chickamauga to find out if the destruction had caused Dragging Canoe's people to lose will to fight, along with a sizable detachment of warriors to assist them. In response to the inquiries, Dragging Canoe held up the war belts he had accepted when the delegation visited Chota in 1776 and said, "We are not yet conquered." To cement the alliance, the Cherokee responded to the Shawnee gesture by sending nearly 100 warriors north. The towns in Chickamauga were rebuilt. Dragging Canoe responded to the Shelby expedition with punitive raids on the frontiers by North Carolina and Virginia. In midsummer 1779, Cameron arrived at Chickamauga with a company of Loyalist refugees and convinced the Cherokee to join them on their march to South Carolina. 300 took up arms and headed out to maraud the back county of Georgia and South Carolina. Later in October, Andrew Williamson's South Carolina militia responded by attacking several towns on the southeastern frontier of Cherokee territory and burning their food stores. So it sounds like to me, and maybe I'm wrong, it's like, You burn my town, then I'm gonna come back and burn your town. You burn my town, then I'm gonna come back and burn your town. And then if we happen to see each other along the way, we gonna fight. Is that what I'm witnessing? Am I missing anything? No? Yes? Maybe. I don't know. So these are attacks and raids. Um, it's just the way that they depict it. You think when you before I started reading this, when I'm thinking war, I'm thinking they just battling, or they're at least guerrilla tactics, meaning they're ambushing one another for control of territory when they're actually attacking towns and cities or residences and waiting for people to leave and burning their food supplies and things of that nature. So I don't know. I wouldn't call that a war. Not like we understand war to be now. So I'm gonna go ahead and read the. LJ Free says that sounds so counterproductive to life. It does, but that's what they were doing. It's more of a. It sounds like more of an approach to discourage you from settling, because every time you settle, then we're going to disrupt your lifestyle, so we're going to force you to move. Back at LJ Free says that's sabotage. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Jay, I would say it's more like a conflict than anything. But they listed it as a war. So the Chickasaw transformed from river centuries into attacking warriors in 1780 when George Rogers Clark and a party of over 500, including some Kaskaskiwa of the Illinois Confederation, built Fort Jefferson. They go another fort. In the surrounding settlement of Clarksville near the mouth of the Ohio, inside of their hunting grounds. The building had begun in April and finished before the first attack on June 7th. That's pretty quick. After learning of the trespass, the Chickasaw destroyed the settlement, laid siege to the fort, and began attacking settlers on the Kentucky frontier. They continued attacking the Cumberland and into Kentucky through early the following year. Their last raid was in conjunction with Dragging Canoe's Cherokee upon Freeland Station on the Cumberland on January 11, 1781. 3 months after the first Chickasaw attack on the Cumberland on April 2nd, 1781, the Cherokee launched their largest campaign of the wars against those settlers. This culminated in what became known as the Battle of the Bluff, led by Dragging Canoe. It lasted through the next day and was the last attack of this war. Afterward, settlers began to abandon these frontier settlements until only 3 stations were left, a condition which lasted until 1785, which basically is what we were talking about. They just basically attacked these people until they left, laid siege upon them. So whoever quit first. So I'm going to go ahead and read the Lenape refugees. It says, while the Middletown warriors kept the Overmountain men busy, the Chickamauga towns welcomed a sizable party of Lenape warriors seeking refuge from the fighting in the Illinois and Ohio countries. These were not just warriors down south temporarily, but permanent settlers who brought their families. Wow. So during the battle in Ohio, which we was talking about earlier, the Lenape left and ended up coming down with the Chickamauga and joining their family. So there were multiple wars and multiple fightings and multiple skirmishes going on. They just labeled them different. It's all one war over land. Politics in the Overhill Towns. In the fall of 1781, the British engineered a coup d'etat of sorts that put Attakullakulla as first beloved man in place of the more pacifist Oconostota, who succeeded Attakullakulla for the next 2 years. The Overhill Cherokee openly, as they had been doing, covertly supported the efforts of Dragging Canoe and his militant Cherokee. On December 27, 1781, Alexander Cameron, British Superintendent of Indian Affairs for the Mississippi District, blood brother to Dragging Canoe and friend to all Cherokee, died in Savannah. He was replaced by John Graham. Rereads. It reminds me of growing up on the block. If you had beef with someone, you always had beef no matter what. Or there were constant skirmishes until the issue was settled. That's true. The diplomatic mission of Fort St. Louis. That's another fort. A party of Cherokee joined the Lenape, Shawnee, and Chickasaw in a diplomatic visit to the Spanish at Fort St. Louis in Missouri Country in March 1782, seeking a new avenue of obtaining arms and other assistance in the prosecution of their ongoing conflict with the Americans in Ohio Valley. One group of Cherokee at this meeting, led by Standing Turkey, sought and received permission to settle in Spanish Louisiana, in the region of the White River. I remember this is before the Louisiana Purchase, so this was owned by the Spanish. So I'm going to leave this for now, because it's like 10:23. But it's just interesting to see how this takes place and transpires with these Cherokee fighting one another and basically destroying each other's property. I don't know. Bones, don't sell out. Y'all got anything y'all wanna add?
Like that.
Mm-hmm.
My bad, both my sons are up now. No, we got some timelining to do. I can see. And some Fortniting, Xbox. Cause these forts, man. I'm ready for the forts.
Yeah, so we have this war, which is going to move out west, and then that's where we're going to start introducing the I guess for lack of better terms, the Buffalo Soldiers, who were nothing more than Indians who were picked or chosen to fight their brothers. Apparently, they were some very talented Indians. And then I guess we'll move to the forts, or we'll move to the forts in conjunction with the Buffalo Soldiers' entry into this war, this Indian War. Yeah. But what I'm saying, as we all been witness to, is that this is not many different wars. This is just one war broken up into different timelines.
And called different names.
Exactly.
Following them breadcrumbs. Hard hat, steel toes.
Yeah. So depending on who's telling the story, whose vantage point, if you are American, it's the Revolutionary War. If you're a Cherokee, Muskogee, or any other Indian, it's the Chickamauga War, or the Cherokee American War. So depending on where you at, location-wise in the fight, And who's telling the story will determine the name or the title of the battle.
And I'm glad you said battle, because I was just about to say that one war, multiple battles.
Or they call them theaters, just locations.
Acts.
So I don't know. That's my viewpoint. That's my stance. That's where I look at it. That's the way it appears. Again, as you, and I'm talking to the chat and the panel, as we start to unveil and find out who our tribes are, you'll start to see what role your tribe had to play in this, and it definitely will affect you differently. I can say personally, the more I found out about my tribe and what we did and what we allowed to happen, I guess the best word I can say is the more disappointed I am and the more responsible I feel. So we got a lot of work to do at the end of the day. A lot of work to do. So I want to thank everyone for coming out and listening. The great thing about this platform is that when you go back and play this, you'll still be able to, those links are still active, so you can click on them and do your research. And you can always send us an email at attachdisassembly@gmail.com with any corrections and your supporting information, and we will definitely correct it. Or depending on what it is that you put in there, we may have you come in and explain it or read it yourself. So, also, too, if there is anybody in your community that's doing work worthy of being recognized, from genealogy or to just supporting the community as a whole, then please share that information with us, because it deserves to be recognized. Like I said, the Thompson's Assembly is here to support the community. You don't have to live where we live for us to support you, or put that information out for it to be appreciated. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bones.
No, I'm just seconding what you're saying. Big old facts. You don't have to live in our area for us to help you.
So just keep that in mind. If you need any help with your genealogy, you just say it again. You don't have to be from our area to get our help.
It's fact. I mean, we're not all in the same area.
Yeah, Macadon 1 is verifying it now. He said he was up all night rewatching the 501 series, and the link's still working. Forever, ever? Forever, ever?
Yeah, so, it's a lot of information we try to put out to help. If there are any questions that you have regarding what what we've put out, let us know. Sellout will drop the links again. attachdisassembly@gmail.com, or you can just go to the website. There's a lot, aka a plethora, don't ask me to spell it, of information regarding those free resources, because I've been using them to help me with my genealogy as well. Because even though a lot of us have found our tribes, we still are doing our genealogy to see how far back we can go for personal reasons, if you will. Again, we're not here to tell you who you are not. If you Pan-African or you believe that your ancestors came from Africa, we do your genealogy and we can help you link up to that tribe. Phenomenal. That's great. Whatever you believe, tribe you came from, or house, if you talk about Africa, we can help you with your genealogy. That's what we're here for. Grandma says, okay, I'm trying to get that idea I want to do off the ground. Help. All right, family. Just reach out to us. Let us know the best time to reach out to you. We'll help. So again, just let us know what's going on in your community. there's anything we can do to help, just let us know. If we can help you, we'll let you know. If we can't, we'll try to find somebody that can help you. No, Sal, is there anything you want to say before we move on out?
Nope.
Okay.
Only the latest response ever. My bad. I could not find the screen for the mute button. My bad. Well, might as well since I'm unmuted saying all this. Peace, y'all. Peace, everybody. I appreciate everybody. Well, we appreciate everybody for coming out. Comments, questions, concerns, corrections, any of that. Email us. That's 24 hours, 7 days a week. Actually, we're always 7 days a week anyway. So, but yeah, everybody. I was about to say have a great weekend. Gracious, it's Monday. Have a great rest of your day.
All right, Bones, you can take us out. Do what you do, bro.
On that note, like we say, it's always fun when we get to kick it with the relatives and the rising. Enjoy spending this time together as we dig through this research, learning more about our history. And on that note, everybody have a blessed day. And until tomorrow's Rising show, peace.
Peace, y'all.